Hi there folks, Matt Gemmell here once again. This is a very quick video, unplanned. I'll have more structured stuff later, but it's the weekend before Christmas week and I have a 4-year-old, loads of stuff to do, but I did have a nice surprise that I wanted to mention. DHL notification of a parcel awaiting came in, and wouldn't you know it, a very familiar type of box for a Nomad user like myself, although somewhat larger. And you've guessed, of course, by now what it is, or indeed seen in the title of the video, the Manta. Wouldn't you know it? I am extraordinarily grateful to Rata for this Christmas present. Incredibly kind of them. I have been doing a lot of videos about Supernote recently, participating in the community, but I am very committed to the platform because it just works for me and it just makes a lot of sense. This is not a sponsorship. There are no conditions attached to receiving this thing. Indeed, there's no communication in relation to other than them saying thanks. So I am saying thanks also. I have, of course, already unboxed it. There's a million unboxings you can watch if you want all the details on that. By now, if you're watching this, you probably know exactly what's in the box, so you don't need me to repeat it, but suffice to say, the gadget itself, the half folio. The pen I got was the new cool transparent one, the Lamy Safari Vista EMR, which is a beautiful thing. I've never actually had a Lamy pen before. I use the Heart of Metal 2 on the Nomad. Very pretty looking thing. There's that Manta back that I'm sure you're all familiar with now, and I just wanted to give a few super quick first impressions from someone who's used to the smaller size, the Nomad, because I think a lot of people probably, they've either got the previous gen or they've got a smaller device and they're curious about sort of how it compares in certain ways. This feels way thinner. It's very noticeably thinner to hold on the side, and I'm doing it with the folio open, of course, to be entirely fair. It really doesn't weigh perceptibly in the hand. I haven't looked up the relative weights, but it really doesn't feel like it weighs much more with a pen attached to the loop as well than the Nomad does with the folio on and with the pen attached. The folio itself, or the half folio rather in this case, the interesting difference, I've got the fake white leather folio for the Nomad, which has that leathery-ish texture on the outside and a soft sort of touch on the interior, whereas this is the same on both sides. The interior and exterior feel the same, which is pretty nice. There are, of course, the eponymous, I suppose, bumps for power and USB-C to give it that shape. The writing feel, after you get past that initial 10 minutes or so, it's exactly like the Nomad. These feel right to screens. People often describe them as sticky to start with, and I didn't know what that meant until I got the Nomad and I took it out, and I did the same with this and sort of ran my fingers over the screen. There was no sense of there being any adhesive on it. But then you start writing and you realise what people mean. And what I think it is, it feels almost like the surface is initially just very rigid and it maybe needs to be sort of slightly broken in, and literally just running the heel of my hand gently all over it for 30 seconds took away any sense of it holding the pen more than you would expect. And it writes exactly like the Nomad now. This is a different screen technology. It's Mobius, which is plastic, but it's also a newer version of Carta. It's Carta 1300. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that perceptibly under normal lighting, I really don't see much of a contrast difference. The Nomad does not suddenly look like dark grey background, and I was worried that I might, if I ever did get a Manta, that it would sort of spoil me for the Nomad. Not the case at all. I mean, even looking at them side by side, and I'll do some proper desk shots later, it feels, there is of course maybe a marginally lighter background, but I can barely notice it, and that's the truth. The writing responsiveness is also something that should, I don't know about writing responsiveness, but certainly the screen update responsiveness, which is a component in your perception of writing responsiveness, should be slightly better, as in quicker, with the newer screen. But again, I really don't notice it. People do these slow motion videos, like you know, an angle right into the pen moving over the surface, and their hand moves fast, and you see the line lagging behind it. But you know, I'm not an Android, so I don't perceive it like that. I just perceive it at the speed that I use it, and I don't see a difference. So that's fantastic news as well, because it means that I will be quite happy to switch between the two and use them in the circumstances that are most suited to, rather than feeling that I'm compromising in either way. So that's fantastic. The folio thing people ask about, there are 4 hooks. There's 2 about there, and there's 1 at each of the outer edges, and you line them up and push it in, and there's a little spring-loaded release catch just in there. Some people have said that when they sort of put a bit of pressure on either side, like pulling here, that it comes out. I think they might just not have seated it properly, because that just does not happen at all. I'm not going to dangle it. Ah, hell, I will. I'll put my hand under. There you go. Doesn't move at all. Pretty secure. The pen loop, attached by 2 screws. You get other pen loops of different sizes, and a cuttable one. You can cut to size that is of a slightly greater rigidity. You can also just take the loop off entirely, and there's a plug thing you get, and spare screws to stop dust getting into the body of the machine. I think because this is so thin, and because the loop's attached directly to the device, I think I'll remove the loop and just keep the other pen sitting nearby, because this is definitely mostly a using on the desk machine for me, because I've got the Nomad. It is lovely in the hand. There is something, we sort of went through that period where we felt that plastic was very much sub-premium and metal was premium. What you get with metal, and I mean, I'm in Scotland, you come into the office in the morning and I've got my iPad up here with its magic keyboard, which is a metal surface now, and the thing is bloody cold. Whereas this is warm. This is, you know, room temperature, above room temperature to the touch, and it's very pleasant, and it has these lovely little rubber feet that just grip the desk surface, and it barely moves when you apply any pressure to it. It's just such a delightfully well built thing, and I run my fingers around the bezel where the screen sits inside the exterior plastic moulding. There is not a bump. I mean, this is a, you know, the Feel-Right film over, I guess, the Mobius plastic substrate. There's an EMR layer in there in some order, and of course there's the panel itself. Presumably the EMR layer's above the panel. Not only is it incredibly shallow, but the way it all sits into the external case, there's so little tolerance in it. When my fingertips perceive it as, I don't know, 1/4 of a mil or something, or less. Similarly on the back with this panel that sits in. This panel that's removable, of course, for the SD card slot and for removing or replacing the motherboard or the battery, is removable itself. There's a little pry point there. There's a few clips, so pop, 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 and then it slides down towards the bottom of the machine. You don't try and pop it out all the way around, by the way. it's a different grade of plastic. The surround being harder, this being more flexible to allow you to safely pop it and remove it. Again, you can feel that there's a join, but there's just like no sitting in tolerance there at all. It's very precisely made, surprisingly so. You think plastic machine, you think something that's cheaply made and flexy and creaky. There's no noise from this thing, believe me. It's pretty impressive, and it has that sort of immediately impressive and confidence inspiring feel in the hand, because it sort of like holds all of its density in a single place and there's no movement. And I mean, I've got the iPad here, and I've got some devices from other manufacturers in the e-ink space which tend to be metal, and because it's plastic, it has this lightness about it, this sense of transportability, but without sacrificing that sort of quality feel. So it's an impressive thing. I'm surprised at the engineering tolerances on it, honestly, for something that is all plastic at this size. It's 10.7 just under inch screen plus the bezel and the surround. Very impressive. I've had no trouble syncing it to the same account. All the notes come over. Because the notes made in the Nomad were made in a 7.8 inch screen, they are scaled to fit. So I think I write with a 0.3mm, is it? Virtual marker tip with the usual pen tool in the Notes app. And of course, there's a slight thickening of strokes when they're scaled up onto the Manta. And the reverse will be true if I make a note on the Manta and sync it and load it up on the Nomad. But that's unavoidable without taking some sort of explicit user choice action to relayer or rezoom or change the page size or something like that, which may come in the future. But the degree of the difference, whilst you've got loads more screen space, the apparent scaling to the human eye is minor. I mean, I could bring up the same note in each of these devices, and again, this is something that'll be a lot better when I do a desk down shot with a camera mounted on the arm here, which I will do. I'm just sort of doing this super quickly, just trying to choose. Yeah, I'll choose my commonplace note, which is quotations that I have collected, and flip these both round with the folios so I can hold them more easily. There's really not too much in it at all. Hopefully there's not too much glare there and you're still getting some light, but this, I mean, obviously looks large on the big screen, but the thickness of the pens, and they are both set to 0.3, is by no means, you know, outrageous or odd looking. So that's another big relief. God, it's a lovely looking thing. It really is. Did I say that I probably removed the loop? Yeah, because I love to keep the pen lids attached and just click them in and click them out. But doing that with the Nomad is fine, because you've got the back of the folio holding it up and it's slightly thicker as it is, and the Heart of Metal lid is not too thick, such that with desk surface, the rear of the folio, the Nomad, the level loop kind of bends up to hold the lid of the pen, and it'll just sit flat on the desk and move itself. Whereas the loop is definitely smaller, the pre-installed loop at least, that comes with the Manta, and the device is thinner front to back, and there is no rear portion to the folio. So when you couple that with, say you have a pen that had, like the fancy Lamy, which has got a thicker lid, or a lid of a greater diameter, I suppose, I believe, and certainly taking into account that huge big clip, as beautiful as it is, there isn't enough give in the loop to just roll upwards. It does start to lift the device a wee bit at the side, and even if I put the heart of metal on it, it'll lift up and the device will pretty much sit flat, but then it's a protrusion which could get in your way if you're writing across the top. Let's say 25% of the screen going over toward the right margin, if you're a right-handed person. Of course, left-handed people in this regard, for once, have the advantage. My son can't write yet, but he would be able to test this at some point in the future because he's a left-handed person, unlike the rest of us in the family. So I think I'll probably either take the loop off or try putting on the cuttable one a huge extension just to give it loads of room over to the side. I'll probably have a play with that tonight. But yeah, so far, all the things I was wondering about: will the writing feel be the same? Will the paper to ink contrast be significantly large, such as to make me feel less comfortable bouncing back between the Nomad and the Manta? And will the plastic casing create flex or a sense of a less premium feel or whatever? All those questions are answered immediately once you get this thing in the hand. Another thing I was wondering is how the half folio is actually manufactured at the hinge point, because that can be, an issue. It can be a place where you're going to get wear and creasing and folding and stress in the future, depending on how it's made. But it has this, I don't know if you can quite see it, there is a flat section that runs straight along the edge, and then the material comes out in the centre, so it actually forms a sort of T shape. There's a flat strip that attaches and it comes out at the very centre, and what happens then is that as it curves under, it's got essentially 90 degrees worth of curve to go down and then fold back in itself. So it's not actually being creased along that point, it's just running at the join, which is, of course they thought of that, but it popped into my mind, will that be a point of stress? And it really doesn't look like it does, because there's this natural lovely little bump that allows it to fold back in itself without creasing the material. So there you go. I'm just so happy that, one, to be given such an incredible present at all. I'm profoundly grateful. And also, of course, to have it before Christmas. Give me a chance to play with it. We have much to do with present wrapping in the evenings, and we're visiting family over Christmas, so I probably won't have time to do many videos in the next week or so, but after that, and indeed when I've had a bit more of a chance to play with it, and particularly to bounce back and forth between the two, the Nomad and the Manta, and figure out my respective use cases and preferences, I'm going to have more vids on that. And God, that pen is pretty. It really is. Particularly with that lovely little white refill cartridge for the internal circuitry that's got Supernote ceramic printed on it. You probably can't quite see it because this camera's set to lock focus on my face, but that is a pretty thing as well. So hopefully that answers a couple of questions that I think a lot of people have had, maybe sets minds at rest on a couple of points, as it did me. And of course to Rata themselves, thank you so much. What an amazing surprise to get. I am very grateful and looking forward to seeing what the new year brings. Thank you for watching this. I hope you'll have a good Christmas and a new year, and please do tune into the next one. Take care.